I checked my watch for the third time in 5 minutes. 7:47 a.m. Sam was supposed to be here 17 minutes ago. The research vessel. Meridian rocked gently in the Pacific swells, 20 miles off the California coast, where the continental shelf dropped into serious deep water. I stood on the aft deck watching the horizon, trying not to let Sam's tardiness get under my skin. We'd been diving together for 3 years now. All this time, and he still couldn't figure out that when I said, "Be here at 7:30, I didn't mean show up whenever you feel like it. Jerry, you're going to wear a hole in the deck." Warren Wright emerged from the main cabin carrying his ever-present clipboard and looking like he'd already had too much coffee. At 52, Warren had the soft build of someone who'd traded fieldwork for administrative duties, but he still knew his way around a research operation. Sam texted, "He's 5 minutes out. He better have a good excuse." I turned back toward the cabin where I could see Christine Wilson hunched over her computer screen, studying something that had her full attention. "What's she looking at?" Warren followed my gaze. "Sonar data from the past week. Some unusual patterns in the local marine life." Unusual was Warren's favorite word when he didn't want to explain something. I'd learned to push when he got vague like that. "What kind of patterns?" "Fish migrations, mostly. Nothing that affects our dive plan." He flipped through papers on his clipboard. "Speaking of which, let's go over the station inspection checklist while we wait for Sam." I followed Warren into the main cabin where Christine sat surrounded by printouts and data charts. She looked up when we entered, and I caught something in her expression. Stress, maybe concern, before she masked it with a professional smile. "Morning, Jerry. Ready for another trip to the bottom of the world?" "Always." I pulled up a chair next to her workstation. Warren mentioned fish migrations. "Anything I should know about?" Christine's fingers paused over her keyboard. "Just some weird movement patterns. The local fish populations have been changing." "Shifting how?" "Moving away from the deep station Omega area. Could be seasonal, could be temperature changes." She minimized the sonar display before I could get a good look at it. "Nothing that should affect your dive." That was the second time in 2 minutes someone had told me nothing would affect my dive. In my experience, when people started saying that, it usually meant something definitely would. Warren spread his checklist across the small table. "Deep Station Omega has been running for 18 months without a major inspection. We need you to check the structural integrity sensors, test the emergency systems, and see if we can upgrade the power grid for the new research equipment." I nodded, already planning the dive in my head. 5,200 meters down, Deep Station Omega sat on the edge of an underwater canyon that dropped another 3,000 meters into some of the deepest water off the California coast. It was exactly the kind of challenging, technical work that reminded me why I'd gotten into deep-sea research in the first place. "Any specific concerns with the station?" I asked. "Nothing major. Some minor power fluctuations last month, but remote diagnostics show everything within normal parameters." Warren checked something off his list. "Tucker's been monitoring the systems remotely, and he says the station's running fine." Tucker Myers showed up in the cabin doorway like he'd heard his name called. At 44, he had that practical, straightforward look of someone who'd spent years keeping complicated machinery working when everything else was falling apart. His work shirt already had grease stains on it, and it wasn't even 8 in the morning yet. "Submersibles prepped and ready," Tucker announced. "Though I should mention we've got a minor issue with the exterior camera. It's working, but the image quality is inconsistent." My stomach dropped a little. How off are we talking? Sometimes crystal clear, sometimes fuzzy. Occasionally, it cuts out for a few seconds. Tucker wiped his hands on a rag. I've checked all the connections twice. Could be a loose wire somewhere in the housing, but nothing I can fix without a full teardown. I felt that familiar pull between playing it safe and pushing forward. The outside camera was crucial for navigation and recording at depth, but it wasn't technically required for the dive. Our sonar and internal instruments could handle the basic station inspection. "Is it safe to dive?" I asked. "Absolutely. The camera's just for visual confirmation. All your primary systems are perfect." Tucker's confidence was reassuring. "I wouldn't send you down if I had any safety concerns." Warren looked at me expectantly. "Your call, Jerry. We can postpone if you're not comfortable with the camera issue." I'd been stuck behind a desk for the past month, analyzing data and writing reports while other teams got the interesting dives. The thought of postponing my return to deep water because of a camera glitch made my skin crawl. This would be my 847th dive, and I'd handled worse equipment problems than a touchy camera. "We'll make it work," I decided. "The station inspection doesn't require extensive filming anyway." "That's what I like to hear." Warren made another check mark. "Christine, anything else Jerry should know about the dive site?" Christine glanced at her computer screen, then back at us. "Water temperature's normal for the depth. Currents are minimal. Should be ideal diving conditions." Something in her voice didn't quite fit what she was saying, but before I could ask about it, Sam's voice drifted across the water from the dock. Sorry. I know I'm late." I looked out the cabin window to see Sam Cox jogging down the pier carrying 2 coffee cups and a paper bag. Even from a distance, I could tell he was genuinely sorry rather than just going through the motions. Sam was one of those people who felt bad about being late, even when it was only a few minutes. "Coffee and donuts," Sam announced as he climbed aboard. "My peace offering for being the worst diving partner in the history of marine research." I took the coffee, which was exactly how I liked it, black, strong, and hot enough to strip paint. "You're not the worst, just the most consistently late." I know. Sarah's car wouldn't start, and I had to drive her to work before coming here." Sam ran a hand through his reddish hair, making it stick up at odd angles. "I promise it won't happen again." Sam had been saying that for 3 years, but his real worry for other people, including his fiancée Sarah, was one of the reasons I liked working with him. He came through when it counted, even if he couldn't manage to show up on time. "Tucker says we've got a camera issue," I told him. "How bad?" "Intermittent. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't." Sam's face changed a little, and I caught a flash of something that might have been relief. "So we're putting it off?" "No, we're diving. The camera's not critical for a station inspection." "Right, of course." Sam nodded, but I noticed his hands were already fidgeting with the silver cross necklace he always wore. "Just checking our options." Warren gathered his papers. "Final equipment check in 30 minutes. Then you're cleared for descent. Target depth 5,200 meters. Estimated dive time 4 hours, including decompression stops." As the team scattered to handle final preparations, I found myself glancing back at Christine's workstation. She'd pulled the sonar data back up and was examining it with the kind of sharp focus that suggested she was seeing something important. "Christine." I walked over to her station. "What exactly are you looking at?" She hesitated, her fingers hanging over the keyboard. "The fish migration patterns I mentioned. They're stronger than I first thought." "Show me." Christine pulled up a sonar map showing the ocean floor around Deep Station Omega. The data was color-coded to show marine life density over the past 2 weeks. What I saw made me scowl. "There's nothing there." Exactly. Christine pointed to the area immediately around the station. 2 weeks ago, this was a thriving ecosystem. Lots of deep-sea fish, normal population density for this depth and location. Now it's empty. I looked over the data again. The dead zone around the station made an almost perfect circle, about 10 miles across. Beyond that boundary, fish numbers seemed fine. But inside, nothing at all. What could cause that? Temperature change, chemical contamination, seismic activity. Christine listed the possibilities without much conviction. Or the fish could have just moved on. Deep-sea populations aren't always predictable. But you don't think that's what happened? Christine glanced around the cabin to make sure we weren't being overheard. I've been tracking these patterns for 6 days. The fish didn't gradually migrate away. They left all at once, sometime between last Tuesday and Wednesday. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the ocean air. Did you tell Warren about this? I mentioned it. He said it wasn't relevant to the dive mission. I stared at the blank sonar screen again. In 8 years of deep-sea research, I'd never watched sea creatures desert a region so thoroughly or so fast. Marine life doesn't just disappear without cause. Jerry, Sam called from the equipment bay. Ready for final checks? I took one more look at Christine's data, then walked toward the diving equipment. Whatever had scared the fish away from Deep Station Omega, we'd find out soon enough. In 4 hours, Sam and I would be sitting on the ocean floor 5,200 meters down, right in the middle of that empty circle. As I started checking my gear, I realized I was more excited than nervous about the mystery. This was exactly why I'd gotten into deep-sea research. The chance to see things no human had ever seen before, to explore places where the usual rules didn't apply. I had no idea I was about to discover just how different those rules could be. The submersible, Deep Explorer, dropped through the first 1,000 meters, like we were falling through liquid space. 1 second we had the last traces of sunlight filtering down through the water, and the next, we were in that perfect black void that always made me feel like I was exactly where I belonged. Camera's acting up again, Sam muttered, tapping the monitor that kept flickering between static and distorted images of rushing water. This is really bothering me, Jerry. What if we need visual confirmation of something important? I glanced at the busted display, then back at our sonar readings. We've got instruments. The cameras just back up anyway. Easy for you to say. You love this stuff. Sam adjusted his headset and checked our depth gauge. 1,500 meters and counting. You know, I've been thinking maybe it's time I moved to shallow water research. Less pressure. Literally and figuratively. That got my attention. Sam had never mentioned switching his specialty before. Since when? Since I realized I spend half these dives trying not to think about how much water is sitting on top of us. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Sarah keeps asking when I'm going to find a safer job. Maybe she's got a point. I focused on our descent rate instead of responding. Sam had been my diving partner for 3 years, and I'd never heard him talk like this. Sure, deep-sea diving wasn't for everyone, but Sam was skilled at it. More than skilled. He was careful and methodical. Exactly the kind of partner you wanted when things went wrong at depth. At 3,000 meters, our sonar picked up something that made me lean forward. Brief blips on the screen, there for a second and then gone. You seeing this? I pointed at the display. Sam glanced over. Probably just fish. Deep sea stuff moves weird down here. The blips showed up again, closer this time. Whatever was causing them was big enough to show clearly on sonar, but they disappeared too fast for the system to get a solid reading. Fish don't usually. Deep Explorer. "This is surface control." Warren's voice crackled through our radio, already getting choppy from the depth. "How's your descent going?" I keyed the radio. "Smooth so far. We're at 3,000 meters, on schedule for station arrival." "Copy that. Christine wanted me to tell you she's found something interesting in her data analysis. She'll brief you when you surface." "What kind of interesting?" Static filled the channel for a few seconds. "Migration patterns. More extensive than thought." "Warren, you're breaking up. Say again." "Tell you later. Focus on mission." The radio went quiet, except for the occasional burst of static. At this depth, communication with the surface always got spotty. But something about Warren's tone bothered me. He'd sounded tense, like he was picking his words carefully. "Great," Sam said. "Now we're completely on our own down here." I felt my ears pop as we kept going down, even though our cabin stayed pressurized. It was all in my head more than anything real. My body's way of telling me we had over 2 miles of ocean sitting above us now. Most people found that thought scary as hell. I found it calming. "You know what I miss?" Sam was fidgeting with his cross necklace again. "Those shallow reef dives we did during training. 30 meters down, plenty of light, fish everywhere. You could actually see what you were doing." "This is better," I said. "Down here, we're seeing things no human has ever seen before. We're explorers. We're also completely dependent on technology that could fail at any second, breathing recycled air, and surrounded by enough water pressure to crush us instantly if something goes wrong." Sam checked our air supply readings. "Sometimes I think we're crazy for doing this." At 4,500 meters, the sonar readings got more frequent. Whatever was moving around us was getting bolder, or there was more of it. The contacts appeared in clusters now, scattered across our display like someone was throwing handfuls of gravel at our sensors. "That's not fish," I said. Sam looked over the readings. "Could be debris. Sometimes stuff falls off research vessels and takes forever to sink to the bottom." "Debris doesn't move in formation." "Formation?" Sam looked at the display more carefully. "Jerry, that's just random scatter. You're seeing patterns that aren't there." But I wasn't imagining it. The sonar contacts were moving together, keeping the same distance between them like they were working as a team. Schools of fish could do that, but not at this depth and not with things this big. "How much further to the station?" Sam asked. 700 meters, maybe 20 minutes at this descent rate." "Good. The sooner we get this inspection done, the sooner we can head back up." Sam's breathing had gotten faster, though he was trying to hide it. "I keep thinking about that empty sonar data Christine showed us. What if whatever scared the fish away is still down there? Then we'll document it and add it to our report. That's what we're here for." "Right. Document the unknown creature that can clear out an entire ecosystem." Sam's laugh was definitely nervous now. "Sometimes I think you're too curious for your own good, Jerry." The sonar contacts grew stronger as we approached 5,000 meters. Not just blips anymore, but solid returns that lasted several seconds before fading. Something was definitely moving in the water around us, and it was big enough to show up clearly on our instruments. "Jerry." Sam's voice had gone quiet. "Look at the sonar sweep." I looked. The contacts weren't random anymore. They were making a rough circle around our position, maybe half a mile out. As I watched, the circle was slowly tightening. "Equipment malfunction," I said, but I didn't believe it. "Yeah. Has to be." Sam's hands were shaking slightly as he adjusted our descent controls. "Our sonar's been acting up all morning, right? Just like the camera." But our sonar had been working fine. It was only the camera that had problems, and Tucker had specifically said All our primary systems were perfect. The contacts moved closer, 400 meters out now, still keeping that circular formation. Whatever was down there with us, it was organized and smart enough to surround us without being seen. Maybe we should abort the dive, Sam said quietly. I checked our depth gauge. 5,100 meters. We were less than 100 meters from Deep Station Omega, closer to the ocean floor than most people would ever get. The thought of turning back now, of missing whatever was waiting for us down there, left me frustrated and restless. We're almost there, I said. Let's at least get visual confirmation of the station. With what visual? Our camera's busted, remember? The station has external lights. We'll be able to see it when we get close enough. Sam stared at the sonar display where the contacts kept moving closer. I've got a really bad feeling about this, Jerry. Like, really bad. It's just the depth getting to you. Happens to everyone. No, it's not the depth. It's... Sam paused, like he was trying to decide whether to say something. I've been picking up weird readings on other dives, too. The past few months. Things that don't make sense. What kind of things? Sonar contacts that move too fast to be fish, too big to be equipment. Water displacement that suggests something massive moving through the area. Sam's voice dropped even lower. I never reported it because I figured people would think I was losing it. The sonar contacts were 300 meters out now. Close enough that if they were real objects, we should be able to see them with our lights. I switched on our external illumination system and looked through the viewport. Nothing but black water and the occasional piece of marine snow drifting past. There's nothing out there, I said. Then what's showing up on sonar? I didn't have an answer for that. Our instruments were screaming that we were surrounded by massive moving shapes, but our eyes showed us nothing but empty ocean. Either our equipment had gone completely haywire, or something down here was incredibly good at staying hidden. Deep Station Omega should be right below us, I said, checking our navigation system. Sam checked the depth gauge. 5,200 meters. We're here. I pointed our lights down, looking for the research station's outline. Deep Station Omega was huge, like a small building. You couldn't miss it even in these murky depths. But all I saw was empty ocean floor stretching into the darkness. Where is it? Sam asked. I checked our navigation again. According to our GPS and inertial guidance, we were right on top of the station's coordinates. But there was nothing below us except bare ocean floor. Maybe we drifted off course, I said, though I knew our navigation was accurate. Or maybe, Sam said quietly, whatever scared away all the fish took the station too. The sonar contacts had stopped moving. They sat still in a perfect circle around us, 200 meters out, like they were waiting for something. I stared down at the empty ocean floor where Deep Station Omega should have been, and for the first time in 8 years of deep-sea diving, I felt genuinely afraid. I guided our submersible through the final approach to Deep Station Omega, watching the known outline of the research platform emerge from the darkness as our lights cut through the black water. After 30 minutes of descent through that strange sonar contact situation, seeing the station sitting exactly where it should be felt like a relief. There she is, I said, adjusting our angle for the docking approach. Right where we left her. Sam leaned forward, studying the station through our viewport. Thank God. For a minute there, I thought we were going to find another empty patch of ocean floor. Our sonar was still acting up, throwing random contacts across the display, but at least the station itself looked solid and real. I started the docking sequence, running through the checklist that had become second nature after hundreds of similar approaches. That's when Sam noticed it. "Jerry, look at the sonar reading directly above the station." I checked the display and my stomach dropped. Something massive was sitting on top of Deep Station Omega. The contact measured about 30 meters long, maybe 8 meters wide, positioned directly over the main research platform. "Has to be a glitch," I said, though I didn't sound convincing even to myself. "Our sonar's been throwing false readings all morning." "That's not a false reading." Sam's voice had gone tight. "That thing's been consistent for the past 5 minutes. Same size, same position." I tried to get a visual on what was happening, but our outside camera kept showing nothing but static and scrambled images. The one time we actually needed the damn thing to work, and it was totally dead. "Could be equipment," I suggested. "Maybe something fell off a research vessel and landed on the station. Something that big would have crushed the platform." Sam had a point. Deep Station Omega was built to handle the crushing pressure at this depth, but it wasn't designed to support the weight of a 30-meter object sitting on top of it. I moved us closer, trying to get a better angle on whatever was up there. The station's external lights were working normally, creating their usual bright circle around the docking area, but the murky water made it hard to see much detail. "The station looks different," I said, though I couldn't put my finger on what had changed. "Different how?" "I don't know. Something about the way it's sitting, maybe." I studied the platform more carefully. There's a lot of debris in the water around it. Sediment patterns look weird too. Sam was right about the debris. Usually the area around Deep Station Omega stayed pretty clear, but now clouds of stirred up sediment swirled around the structure like something huge had passed through not long ago. "Jerry, I really think we should abort this dive." Sam's breathing had gotten faster, though he was trying to hide it. Between the sonar contacts on the way down and now this thing sitting on the station, everything about this feels wrong. I could hear the edge of panic creeping into his voice. Sam had always been more cautious than me, but this was different. He sounded genuinely terrified. "We're already here," I said. "Let's at least dock and get a visual on whatever's up there. If it looks dangerous, we'll surface immediately." "With what visual? Our camera's busted, remember?" "The station has external cameras. We can access them once we're docked." Sam stared at the sonar display where the large contact sat completely still above the platform. "I've got a really bad feeling about this, Jerry. Like worse than anything I've felt on a dive before. It's just the depth getting to you. Happens to everyone eventually." "No, it's not the depth." Sam's hands were shaking slightly as he monitored our approach. "I keep thinking about what Christine said. All the fish disappearing from this area. What if whatever scared them away is still down here?" I focused on lining up our sub with the docking hatch, trying to ignore how Sam's nerves were getting to me. The approach looked normal. Station lights working, docking hatch clear, all systems showing green. "Look, whatever's on the sonar is probably just debris," I said. "Ocean currents can carry all kinds of junk down here. Remember that shipping container we found last year?" "Shipping containers don't show up as organic on sonar." That stopped me cold. "What do you mean, organic?" Sam pointed to a readout I hadn't been paying attention to. "The sonar classification system. It's reading the contact as biological rather than metallic or mineral." I stared at the display. Sam was right. Our sonar was sophisticated enough to tell the difference between various types of objects based on density and composition, and it was clearly marking the thing above the station as a living creature. "System malfunction," I said, but my voice sounded hollow. "Yeah, has to be." Sam wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool temperature in our cabin. "Our equipment's been acting up all day, right?" but even as I said it, I knew our sonar had been working fine. It was only the camera that had problems, and Tucker had specifically said all our primary systems were perfect. I brought us in closer to the docking hatch, our lights showing the airlock mechanism I'd seen 100 times before. Everything looked normal from this angle, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the whole situation. Debris patterns are really weird, I muttered, watching sediment swirl around the station in ways that didn't match the current flow. Like something big moved through here recently? Yeah, something really big. The sonar contact above the station hadn't moved in the past 10 minutes. Whatever it was just hanging there, completely still, as if it was waiting for something. Jerry, please. Let's just surface and report what we found. Let someone else figure out what's up there. I looked at Sam's pale face and saw real fear in his eyes. In 3 years of diving together, I'd never seen him this shaken. Part of me wanted to listen to him, to trust his gut and get us out of there. But we were so close. After a month of desk work and red tape, I was finally back in the deep ocean doing actual research. The thought of going up without finishing our mission, of having to explain to Warren that we'd turned back because of some sonar readings, made my chest tight with frustration. We dock, we check the station's external cameras, we identify what's up there, I said. 5 minutes, then we're gone. Sam stared at me for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes. That's it. I started the final docking sequence, watching our distance to the hatch drop on the navigation display. 50 meters. 40. 30. The sonar contact above the station stayed perfectly still. 20 meters. 10. I was focusing so hard on the docking procedure that I almost missed it when Sam grabbed my arm. Jerry, he whispered. Look at the sonar. I glanced at the display and felt ice water flood my veins. The 30-meter contact wasn't sitting still anymore. It was moving. The impact hit us out of nowhere. 1 second, I was lining up our final approach to the docking hatch, and the next, our submersible was spinning through the water like a toy someone had thrown across a bathtub. The force of whatever hit us from above sent every loose object in our cabin flying, and I slammed against my restraints, hard enough to see stars. What the hell was that? Sam shouted, his hands flying over the emergency controls as alarms started screaming throughout our vessel. I fought to regain control, but the steering felt wrong, sluggish, and wouldn't respond. The depth gauge was climbing fast. Whatever had hit us was pushing us deeper, past our normal operational limits. Surface control. This is Deep Explorer, Sam was yelling into his headset. We have an emergency situation. Something just collided with our vessel. Static. Nothing but static crackling back through the radio. Surface control, do you copy? We need immediate assistance. Still nothing. At this depth, with our communications already spotty, the impact might have damaged our radio antenna completely. I managed to stop our spinning and get a look at our damage assessment display. The readings made my stomach drop. Our docking mechanism was completely destroyed, twisted metal, where it should have been smooth connection points. Worse, we had a crack running along our outer hull, not deep enough to breach our pressure seals yet, but definitely not something you wanted to see when you were over 3 miles underwater. Jerry, look outside, Sam whispered. I turned toward our viewport and felt my mind struggle to process what I was seeing. Our exterior lights were shining on something that shouldn't exist. A surface covered in scales the size of dinner plates, each one a dark greenish black that seemed to swallow our lights, rather than bounce them back. The surface was drifting past our window in a slow, deliberate pattern that suggested something massive swimming around us. That's not possible, I said, though the words felt stupid even as I spoke them. Tell that to the thing that just tried to crush us." Sam's voice had gone high and tight. "How big do you think that is?" I watched more of the scaled surface slide past our viewport, trying to guess the size based on what we could see. The thing had to be at least 30 meters long, maybe more. Our sonar readings hadn't been wrong. There really was something huge sitting on Deep Station Omega, and now it was very much awake and very much aware of us. The creature's movement created powerful water currents that grabbed our damaged submersible and tossed us around like we weighed nothing. I wrestled with the controls, trying to keep some kind of stable position, but it was like trying to steer in a hurricane. "Emergency ascent," Sam said, reaching for the ballast controls. "We need to surface right now." He hit the emergency blow switch that should have emptied our ballast tanks and sent us shooting toward the surface. Nothing happened. The indicator lights showed our ballast system had been damaged in the crash. "It's not working," Sam's voice cracked. "Jerry, the emergency ascent isn't working." I checked the system diagnostics and my blood turned cold. The impact had destroyed more than just our docking mechanism. Our primary ascent system was completely dead, and our backup flashed angry red warning lights. "We're trapped down here," Sam whispered. The scaled surface vanished from our viewport, but sonar revealed the enormous contact moving around us in a slow, calculated pattern. This wasn't random animal behavior. The creature was studying us, trying to figure out what we were and what we might do next. "It's hunting us," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "Don't say that. Don't even think that." Sam was hyperventilating now, his breathing coming in short, panicked gasps. "It's just a big fish or something. Maybe a whale. Whales don't hunt people." But whales didn't have scales like armor plating, and they definitely didn't wait motionless on deep-sea research stations before attacking submersibles. Whatever was circling us had been lying in wait, and it had hit us with enough precision to disable our escape systems without completely destroying our vessel. Our depth gauge showed 5,300 meters and climbing. The creature was still pushing us deeper, away from any hope of rescue, into water so deep that even if our radio worked, no surface vessel could reach us in time. "How much air do we have?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Sam checked our life support systems with shaking hands. 6 hours, maybe 7 if we stay calm and don't panic." Stay calm. Right. Easy to say when you're not trapped in a damaged submersible with something the size of a building swimming circles around us. The creature completed another pass, and this time I got a better look at it through our viewport. What I saw made my mouth go dry. This wasn't just big. It was absolutely massive, with a body that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. And those scales weren't just protective armor. They were moving, changing, and adjusting like the creature could control each one individually. "It's intelligent," I said. "What?" "Look at how it's moving. This isn't random. It's thinking about what it's doing." Sam stared out the viewport as another section of the creature glided past. "You're wrong. You have to be wrong. Things that big can't be intelligent." But I wasn't wrong. The creature's behavior was too calculated, too intentional. It had waited for us to approach the station, then struck at exactly the right moment to cripple our escape systems without killing us outright. That took planning and understanding of human technology. Our sonar showed the contact moving closer, drawing its circular pattern tighter around our position. Whatever this thing was, it was getting ready to make its move, and I had a feeling we weren't going to like what happened next. "Jerry," Sam's voice was barely audible. "I think I can see its head." I looked where he was pointing and felt my grip on reality slip another notch. Through the murky water lit by our dying exterior lights, I could make out what might have been a massive eye, easily 3 feet across, dark and alien, and definitely focused right on us. The creature had stopped circling. It just hung there in the water, studying us with that enormous eye, like it was deciding what to do with the two tiny humans it had caught in its snare. The pressure alarms had been wailing for so long that they'd become background noise, like living inside a fire truck. I kept hitting the emergency ballast release over and over, even though I knew it was pointless. Our depth gauge read 6,200 meters and climbing. No, falling. We were dropping into water so deep that our submersible's hull was never meant to handle it. Jerry. Sam's voice came out as barely a whisper. The cracks are getting bigger. I looked where he was pointing and felt my chest tighten. The hairline fracture that had started near our main viewport was spreading across the reinforced glass like a spider web. Each crack made a tiny popping sound that somehow cut through all the alarms and mechanical noise. The creature was still with us. Our sonar showed it moving alongside our descent, matching our speed perfectly. Sometimes it would bump us, gentle nudges that sent us spinning through the water. But it wasn't trying to destroy us anymore. It was guiding us, steering our fall towards something. Sam, I need you to focus. I grabbed his shoulder, trying to snap him out of whatever shock he was sliding into. How much air do we have left? He stared at the life support panel for a long moment, like he was having trouble reading the numbers. Maybe 3 hours. Less if we keep breathing this hard. 3 hours. At our current rate of descent, we'd hit the ocean floor in maybe 20 minutes. The math was simple and terrifying. We were going to spend our final moments sitting on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, waiting for our air to run out or our hull to finally give way. The backup ballast, I said, though I'd already tried it twice. Maybe if we... It's not working, Jerry. Sam's hands were shaking as he pointed to the control panel. Nothing's working. That thing broke everything when it hit us. I tried the backup system anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? The indicator lights flickered weakly, showing maybe 10% functionality. Enough to slow our descent slightly, but nowhere near enough to get us back to the surface. 6,800 meters. 7,000. 7,200. The creature appeared at our viewport again, and this time I got a better look at it. The thing was huge. Our sonar readings had been right about the 90-foot length, but seeing it up close made those numbers feel pointless. Each scale covering its body moved independently, changing and adjusting as it swam. And the way it cut through the water, something that big shouldn't be able to move so smoothly. Sam, look at this. I pointed to our sonar display, which was finally giving us clear readings now that the creature had stopped circling. It's not just big. Look at the detail resolution. Sam leaned over, squinting at the screen. What am I looking at? Tentacles. Dozens of them. The sonar was picking up appendages extending from the creature's main body, each one longer than our entire submersible. They're not moving randomly. It's using them to control water flow around us. That's when I got it. The thing wasn't just chasing us down. It was controlling our fall, using those huge tentacles to push water around and make us drop at whatever speed it wanted. Why? Sam's voice cracked. Why is it doing this to us? I didn't have an answer. In 8 years of deep-sea research, I'd never seen anything that showed this level of deliberate behavior. Fish didn't plan. They didn't manipulate their environment to control other creatures. But this thing was doing exactly that. 7,800 meters. Our hull groaned under the pressure, a sound like metal crying. Jerry. Sam was staring at something on his instrument panel. I've been getting readings like this before. What do you mean? Other dives. The past few months. His hands were shaking worse now, Sonar contacts that moved too fast, too deliberately. Water displacement that didn't match anything I'd ever seen. I turned to look at him. You never said anything about this. Because I thought I was losing my mind. Sam wiped sweat from his forehead. Who was going to believe me? Giant creatures in the deep ocean that disappear before you can get visual confirmation. 8 to 200 meters. The pressure was getting to both of us now. I could feel it in my sinuses, a building ache that made thinking difficult. How many times? I asked. 6, maybe 7. Sam's breathing was getting shallow. Always in deep water, always near research stations or underwater installations, and always the same pattern. Sonar contacts that seemed to be watching us, then vanishing when we tried to investigate. The creature slammed into us again, this time with enough force to send our sub tumbling through the water. Through our fractured viewport, I saw something that my mind couldn't quite accept. Tentacles. Enormous, twisting appendages stretching out from the beast's body like the limbs of some monstrous octopus. Each one had to be 40 feet long, covered in those same dark scales, moving with a smooth intelligence that was absolutely horrifying. It's not just one creature, I said, the words coming out before I'd fully formed the thought. What? Look at the sonar. Really look at it. I pointed to our display, which was showing details I'd missed before. Those aren't tentacles. They're separate entities. Sam stared at the screen, and I watched his face go pale. The sonar was revealing the truth. What we'd thought was one massive creature was actually multiple beings moving in perfect coordination. The main body was huge, but the things we'd mistaken for tentacles were smaller creatures, maybe 20 feet long each, swimming in formation around the larger entity. A pack, Sam whispered. They're hunting in a pack. 8,800 meters. Our outside lights started blinking on and off as the electrical systems fought against the crushing pressure. When they briefly lit up, I could see more of those things swimming around us. Not just the huge one we'd been following, but others. Smaller ones, though still way bigger than anything that should be living down here. The main creature moved right underneath us, and I felt our fall slow down a bit. It was using its body to control our drop, guiding us with a kind of accuracy that showed this thing was way smarter than any sea life I'd ever seen. Where is it taking us? Sam asked. I checked our position on the nav system. We were still dropping toward the same coordinates where Deep Station Omega should have been, but we were going way deeper than the station's operational depth. The ocean floor, I said. It's taking us all the way down. 9,200 meters. Our hull kept making those awful groaning sounds, metal pushed way past what it was built to handle. The cracks in our viewport had crawled across half the reinforced glass. The thing's behavior shifted as we got close to 9,500 meters. Instead of that steady descent it had been controlling, it suddenly sped up, dragging us down faster. The smaller things, I was certain now that's what they were, started swimming in tighter circles around us. They're getting agitated, I said, watching the sonar display. Something's got them excited. Sam was hyperventilating now, his breathing coming in short gasps. Jerry, I can't do this. I can't handle going any deeper. But we didn't have a choice. The creatures were in complete control of our descent, and they were taking us somewhere specific, somewhere deep enough that no human had ever been there and lived to tell about it. 10,000 meters. Our depth gauge was reading numbers I'd only seen in textbooks about oceanic trenches. We were in water so deep that the pressure should have crushed our submersible like an empty soda can. That's when our sonar caught something else, something huge coming up from the bottom. Sam, I said, my voice barely audible over the alarms. Look at the bottom contact. He looked at the display and made a sound like all the air had been knocked out of his lungs. The ocean floor was moving, rising toward us like the earth itself was waking up. And I realized with a clarity that cut through all the fear and confusion that we hadn't just run into some unknown species of deep-sea predator. We'd found something that had been waiting down here in the crushing darkness. Something old and patient and absolutely huge. Something that had been calling its children home. The crash into the ocean floor felt like the entire planet had just sucker-punched us. Our sub slammed into the bottom at 10,000 meters, sending up a massive cloud of mud and sediment that turned our exterior lights into useless, yellow blurs. The creature that had been dragging us down just disappeared. 1 second it was there on our sonar, and the next our screens showed nothing but empty water above us. "Are we alive?" Sam's voice came out shaky and small. I blinked hard, trying to clear my head. The last thing I remembered was that massive eye watching us from the darkness, the creature just hanging there motionless in the water before everything went black. Somehow we'd made it through. The emergency pumps must have started up and cleared enough water for us to survive the final drop. I went through our systems check, though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely see the displays. Most of our equipment was either completely dead or throwing error messages I'd never seen before. Our radio made static noises before going quiet. The emergency beacon that should have been sending our location to surface vessels showed a red offline light. "Radio's fried," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emergency beacon's down too." Sam wiped his nose and his hand came away bloody. The pressure changes during our wild descent had beaten us up pretty badly. I could feel the early warning signs of decompression sickness creeping through my joints. A dull ache that would turn nasty if we didn't get back to normal pressure soon. "How much air?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Sam checked our life support with shaking fingers. 6 hours. Maybe less if we keep breathing this hard. 6 hours to figure out how to get a damaged submersible from the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean back to the surface. The math was simple and terrifying. I stared out through our cracked viewport at the alien landscape around us. Our lights lit up a barren stretch of ocean floor, covered in fine sediment that our crash had kicked into thick clouds. Nothing moved out there. No fish, no crabs. Nothing that hinted life could survive at this crushing depth. "Why did it leave?" Sam asked. "That thing controlled our entire descent, and then it just disappeared." I'd been thinking the exact same thing. The way that thing acted was way too focused, too intentional to just ditch us for no reason. It dragged us down here because it wanted something. "Maybe it got what it wanted," I said, though I wasn't sure what that meant. Sam was studying our sonar display, which was finally giving us clear readings now that we weren't spinning through the water. "Jerry, look at this." I leaned over to see what he was pointing at. Our sonar was picking up huge rock formations around us, not just the flat ocean floor I'd expected, but towering structures that looked almost like underwater mountains. "Those aren't natural," I said, adjusting our sonar range to get a better picture. The formations were too regular, too even. They jutted up from the ocean floor in patterns that screamed artificial construction, not natural geological processes. And they were massive. Some had to be over 100 meters tall. "What are they?" Sam whispered. Before I could answer, something crashed into our sub from below, with enough force to lift us clean off the ocean floor. The hit threw me against my restraints and sent every loose object in our cabin flying around again. "That came from underneath," Sam said, his voice high with panic. I checked our hull integrity sensors, and my stomach sank. Whatever had hit us had torn through our lower hull sections. We weren't taking on water yet, but red warning lights were blinking across half the control panels. "It's not the same thing," I said, staring at our sonar display. "The creature that brought us down here is gone. This is something else." The sonar picked up a new contact right under us, something huge moving through the mud below our sub. It was way bigger than whatever had come after us at the station. Another hit from underneath, stronger this time. Our main window, already cracked from the pressure, sprouted fresh fracture lines that spread across the thick glass like a spider web. "We need to get out of here," Sam said, reaching for our emergency ballast controls. But our ballast system was still down, and even if it worked, we were too deep for a normal ascent. The pressure differential would kill us long before we reached the surface. The thing below us struck again, and this time I saw something that made my brain struggle to process what was happening. A massive tentacle, easily 3 meters thick, punched straight through our main viewport in an explosion of freezing seawater and shattered glass. The ocean rushed in with the force of a fire hose, and our cabin pressure alarm started screaming as ice-cold water flooded our compartment. I grabbed for my emergency breathing gear, but the shock of the freezing water made my hands clumsy and unresponsive. "Sam!" I yelled, but when I looked toward his position, another tentacle was already coiling around his body like a massive snake. I caught one glimpse of his face, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear over the rushing water, before the tentacle hurled him against the cabin wall with bone-crushing force and let him go into the rising flood. "Sam! Sam!" I screamed his name as I struggled with my breathing apparatus, watching his unconscious form float in the churning water as our submersible continued to flood. The water was up to my chest now, so cold it felt like being stabbed with ice picks. My emergency breathing gear finally kicked in, giving me precious air, but I could feel hypothermia setting in fast. My hands were already going numb. More tentacles pushed through our broken viewport, each one thick as a tree trunk and covered in the same dark scales I'd seen on the creature above. But these were different, longer, more flexible, moving with a smooth intelligence that was absolutely scary. I watched in horror as the tentacles began wrapping around our entire submersible, lifting us off the ocean floor like we weighed nothing. Through the rushing water and my fading vision, I could see dozens of them, maybe hundreds, coming up from the mud below. This wasn't the creature that had brought us down here. This was something that lived in these depths, something that had been waiting in the deep ocean mud for prey to fall within its reach. The tentacles squeezed tighter around our vessel, and I heard the hull starting to buckle under pressure that no human-made machine was built to handle. My breathing gear was still working, but the water was so cold, I could feel my awareness fading. As the blackness crept in, my last clear thought was the horrible realization that we hadn't just encountered one unknown species. We'd walked straight into the hunting ground of something way, way worse. I tried to open my eyes, but the brightness stabbed through my head like needles. Everything ached, not just the obvious things like my left arm, which felt heavy as stone, but a deeper hurt that seemed to radiate from my bones themselves. "Mr. Castillo? Can you hear me?" The voice belonged to a woman I didn't know. I managed to crack my eyes open enough to see a doctor in navy scrubs standing next to my bed, holding a tablet and looking at me with concern that told me I was probably in worse shape than I felt. "Where am I?" My voice came out as a croak. My throat felt like I'd been gargling with sand. "Scripps Memorial Hospital. I'm Dr. Martinez." She pulled up a chair and sat down, which seemed like a bad sign. Doctors who had time to sit usually had complicated things to explain. "You've been unconscious for 12 hours. Do you remember what happened?" I tried to think back, but everything after hitting the ocean floor came in scattered pieces. Ice-cold water flooding our cabin. Sam's face, eyes wide with terror. huge tentacles smashing through our viewport like it was made of paper. "Sam?" I said, trying to sit up. "Where's Sam? Is he—" "Mr. Castillo, I need you to stay calm." Dr. Martinez put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Your partner didn't make it. I'm very sorry." The words slammed into me. I'd known somewhere in the back of my mind, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that felt too overwhelming to understand. "How did I get here?" I asked, because focusing on logistics seemed easier than thinking about Sam being gone. Dr. Martinez checked her tablet. "A naval rescue vessel found you floating unconscious in an emergency survival pod at 200 meters depth. The pod's automatic systems had activated, but you have no memory of how you got inside it." I shook my head, which was a mistake because it made the room spin. "I don't remember anything after our submersible started flooding. That's not unusual with this type of trauma." She showed me her tablet, which displayed what looked like a medical scan of my body. "You have injuries consistent with massive pressure changes and what appear to be tentacle wounds across your torso and legs. Frankly, Mr. Castillo, you shouldn't be alive. The depth where they found you, the pressure differential, the hypothermia, any one of those things should have killed you." I looked down at my body for the first time and saw bandages everywhere. My left arm was trapped in a cast from wrist to elbow, and I could make out the edges of deep cuts through the hospital gown that covered my chest and legs. "Tentacle wounds?" I asked. Dr. Martinez nodded. "The cuts show a clear pattern, parallel slashes with spacing that points to contact with large cephalopod arms. But the size would mean a creature much bigger than anything known to exist at those depths." Before I could ask more questions, the door opened and Warren walked in, followed by Tucker. Both men looked like they hadn't slept, and Warren was carrying a folder thick enough to be a phone book. "Jerry, thank God you're awake." Warren pulled up another chair while Tucker stood near the door, fidgeting with his phone. "We've been worried sick." "What happened to our submersible?" I asked. "Dr. Martinez said I was found in a survival pod, but I don't remember." "The vessel was completely destroyed," Tucker interrupted, his voice flat. "We can't bring it up from that depth. The pressure down there, the equipment failure. There's nothing left worth recovering." Something about the way he said it bothered me. Tucker loved that submersible like it was his own child. He should have been devastated about losing it, but he sounded almost relieved. "What about Deep Station Omega?" I pressed. "Did you get teams down there to investigate what happened?" Warren and Tucker's eyes met for a beat longer than normal. "The military has classified all information about the rescue operation," Warren said carefully. "We're not authorized to discuss the details of what they found down there." "The military?" I tried to sit up straighter, ignoring the pain that shot through my ribs. "Since when does the Navy get involved in marine research accidents?" "Since the accidents happen in waters deep enough to be considered matters of national security," Warren replied, opening his folder. "Jerry, I need you to understand that what happened down there was traumatic. Pressure effects, hypothermia, oxygen deprivation. These things can cause hallucinations that seem completely real." I stared at him. "You think I'm making this up? I think you experienced something terrifying, and your brain is trying to make sense of it by creating explanations that feel logical." Warren pulled out what looked like an official report. "The preliminary investigation suggests equipment failure caused catastrophic decompression. Sam was killed in the initial breach, and you somehow made it to the emergency pod before losing consciousness." "That's not what happened." The memories were coming back clearer now, sharp-edged and impossible to dismiss. "There were creatures down there. Multiple creatures. They attacked our submersible deliberately." Tucker stepped forward. "Jerry, you were at crushing depth for over an hour. The human brain can't work right under those conditions. What you remember might not be. I know what I saw. I looked between the two of them, seeing something in their faces that made my chest tighten. You don't believe me. We believe you experienced something traumatic, Warren said gently. But giant sea creatures attacking deep-sea installations? Jerry, you're a scientist. You know how that sounds. Dr. Martinez had been listening quietly, but now she cleared her throat. Actually, Mr. Castillo's injuries are consistent with his account. The tentacle wounds show a pattern of deliberate contact rather than accidental collision with debris. Warren's expression hardened slightly. Doctor, with respect, you're not a marine biologist. There are many ways someone could sustain those types of injuries during a catastrophic pressure failure. The way he said it made me realize something that sent a chill down my spine. Warren wasn't just doubtful about my story. He was actively trying to discredit it. Why are you lying to me? I asked. Jerry, no, seriously. Why are you sitting here trying to convince me that what I experienced didn't happen? Sam is dead. Our submersible was destroyed. Something down there killed my partner and nearly killed me, and you're acting like it was just an equipment malfunction. Warren closed his folder and got to his feet. You need to rest. We can talk about this more once you've had some time to wrap your head around everything. I don't need time to process. I need answers. I tried to get out of bed, but Dr. Martinez put a firm hand on my shoulder. Mr. Castillo, you have multiple fractures and severe lacerations. You're not going anywhere for at least a week. Warren and Tucker were already heading for the door. We'll check on you tomorrow, Warren said. Try to get some sleep. After they left, Dr. Martinez sat back down and looked at me with those sharp, dark eyes. You don't believe them either, I said. She went quiet for a long moment. I've been doing emergency medicine for 20 years. I've handled diving accidents, pressure injuries, hypothermia cases, all of it. Your injuries don't match what they're telling me. What do you think happened? I think you encountered something down there that left very specific wounds on your body. Whether that was equipment debris or something else, I can't say. But the pattern of your injuries suggests contact with something organic and very large. I sank back against my pillow, trying to piece everything together. Sam was dead. Our sub was wrecked. And Warren and Tucker were feeding me lies about what went down, which meant they knew way more than they were letting on. Dr. Martinez, the naval rescue team that found me, did they file a report about what they saw down there? That information is classified, I'm sorry. Top secret. Everything about our dive was suddenly top secret, which meant the military knew exactly what had attacked us, and they were covering it up. I was still mulling that over when I heard voices in the hallway outside my room. Warren and Tucker, talking quietly, but their words carried just enough for me to catch pieces. Keep him sedated until we can. Story needs to be consistent. Can't let him talk to anyone else about. I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep as their voices faded down the corridor. But my mind was racing, putting together pieces that painted a picture I didn't want to believe. Warren and Tucker weren't just hiding information about what had happened to us. They were actively working to make sure I couldn't tell anyone the truth about what was living in the deep ocean. And that meant Sam and I hadn't just wandered into some unknown species by accident. We'd been sent down there on purpose, as bait for something they already knew was lurking in the dark. I woke up feeling like someone had scraped the inside of my skull with sandpaper, but my head was clearer than it had been since the rescue. The fog of whatever painkillers they'd been pumping into me was finally lifting, and with it came memories that slammed into me hard. Sam's face, in those final seconds. The sound of our hull buckling under crushing pressure. Tentacles thick as telephone poles punching through reinforced glass like it was tissue paper. Warren and Tucker showed up around 10, both carrying coffee and wearing the kind of forced casual expressions that meant they'd rehearsed this conversation. Warren pulled his chair closer to my bed while Tucker hung back near the door like he was planning a quick exit. "How are you feeling today?" Warren asked, setting his coffee on my bedside table. "Like I got crushed by 3 miles of ocean water." I studied both their faces, looking for tells. But my memory's getting clearer. Tucker moved in his chair. "That's good. Sometimes trauma can make things seem..." Cut the crap. I sat up straighter, ignoring the pain that shot through my ribs. "I want to know what really happened down there. And don't give me another speech about pressure hallucinations." Warren and Tucker's eyes met again. That same lingering glance from yesterday that went on just a second too long. "Jerry, we've been trying to protect you from information that might be difficult to process," Warren said carefully. "Protect me from what?" "Deep Station Omega is gone." Warren's voice was flat, matter of fact. "Not damaged, not destroyed. Gone. There's no trace of it anywhere." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean a multi-million-dollar research facility that was anchored to the ocean floor with titanium cables just vanished," Tucker said. "No wreckage, no debris field, no evidence it was ever there. That's impossible. Something that size doesn't just disappear." "We know how it sounds," Warren said, "but the military submarines that pulled you out of the water confirmed it. The entire installation is missing." Military submarines, not research ships like they'd said yesterday. "Since when does the Navy use submarines for marine research rescues?" I asked. Tucker looked uncomfortable. "Since the rescues happen in areas that are considered matters of national security." "You said research vessels yesterday. Now you're telling me it was military submarines." I leaned forward, watching both their faces. "What else have you been lying about?" Warren rubbed his forehead. "We weren't lying. We were trying to give you information gradually so you wouldn't..." "So I wouldn't what? Remember that multiple creatures attacked our submersible? Remember that something down there was intelligent enough to disable our escape systems without killing us immediately?" "Jerry, you were at crushing depth for over an hour," Tucker said. "The human brain, my brain is fine." I cut him off. "And my memories are getting clearer every hour. I know what I saw down there." Warren stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the parking lot. "The preliminary investigation suggests that seismic activity in the area may have caused the station to collapse into an underwater sinkhole. Seismic activity doesn't explain what happened to our submersible. Equipment failure during a catastrophic pressure event can cause..." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop with the official explanations. You both look terrified, and you're trying way too hard to convince me that what I experienced didn't happen." Tucker's phone buzzed, and he checked it with the kind of urgency that suggested he'd been waiting for a message. "We should go," he said to Warren. "We're not done here," I said. "Yes, we are." Warren turned back from the window. "Jerry, I need you to understand something. The people investigating this incident have resources and authority that go way beyond our research program. They're asking questions about your mental state, your reliability, your fitness for future diving operations." The message was quiet, but obvious. "Keep talking about creatures and lose my career. Are you saying my diving certification is in jeopardy?" I'm saying that people who insist on impossible explanations for traumatic events sometimes find themselves classified as psychologically unfit for dangerous work. They left me sitting there with that hanging in the air, but I could hear them talking in quiet voices just outside my door. Needs to be consistent with the official report. Can't have him talking to other researchers about. Military wants a full debrief before. Their voices faded as they walked down the corridor, but I'd heard enough. The military was involved. They were coordinating their story, and they were planning to discredit me if I didn't play along. I was still trying to wrap my head around all of that when Christine showed up in my doorway around 2 p.m. She checked the room carefully before stepping inside and shutting the door behind her. "How are you feeling?" she asked, but her tone was different from Warren and Tucker's forced concern. She sounded genuinely worried. "Like everyone's lying to me about what happened down there." Christine pulled up the chair Warren had left behind and sat down. "What do you remember?" I told her everything. The creatures circling our sub as we went down. The huge thing that had been waiting on Deep Station Omega. The planned attack that knocked out our systems. The tentacles smashing through our viewport. Christine listened without interrupting, her face getting more worried with each detail. "Warren and Tucker think I'm having trauma-induced hallucinations," I finished. "Warren and Tucker are scared," she said quietly. "Of what?" Christine reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. "I've been analyzing geological survey data from the area where Deep Station Omega was located." She showed me a series of sonar images that made my stomach drop. The ocean floor where our station had been anchored was completely transformed. Instead of the flat sediment plain I remembered, the seafloor showed massive disturbance patterns, gouges and displacement marks that looked like something enormous had been moving through the area. "This was taken 3 days after your rescue," Christine said. "The entire seafloor has been churned up across a 5-mile radius." "What could cause that kind of disturbance?" "I don't know. But there's something else." She swiped to another image. "I've been tracking marine life in the area since your dive. The new sonar data showed something that made me freeze. The ocean around Deep Station Omega's former location was completely empty. Not just fish, everything. The water samples showed no bacteria, no plankton, no microscopic life of any kind." "How big is the dead zone?" I asked. 50 square miles and growing. Whatever happened down there, it's created an area where nothing can survive." I stared at the data, thinking back to that empty circle Christine had shown me before our dive. The fish had been running from the area for weeks before we went down. "You knew something was wrong before we dove," I said. "That's why you were so nervous during the briefing." Christine nodded. "I'd been tracking weird readings for months. Sonar contacts that didn't match any known marine life. Water movement patterns that suggested something huge moving through the deep ocean." "Why didn't you say anything?" I tried. I reported the patterns to Warren, but he said they were classified as irrelevant to our mission parameters. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Jerry, I think our dive was never about routine station inspection. I think we were sent down there to investigate something they already knew was in the area." The pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made my stomach turn. "They used us as bait." "I think so. And now they're trying to cover up what happened because the truth is too dangerous to acknowledge." Christine looked toward the door, then back at me. "I need to show you something else. But not here. Not where anyone might overhear." She got up and walked to the window, checking the parking lot the same way Warren had done earlier. "There are people watching this hospital," she said quietly. "Military personnel in civilian clothes. They've been here since you were admitted." I felt ice water in my veins. What are you saying? Christine turned back to me, and I could see real fear in her eyes. I'm saying that what you encountered down there is bigger than just unknown marine life, and the people who sent you down there will do whatever it takes to keep that information from getting out. She walked back toward the door, stopping with her hand on the handle. I'll be back tonight after visiting hours. There's more you need to see, but I can't risk showing you here. She looked directly at me. Jerry, whatever you do, don't tell anyone else what you remember. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not anyone who asks. Your life might depend on keeping quiet until we can figure out what's really happening. After she left, I lay in my hospital bed staring at the ceiling and trying to process everything I'd learned. Deep Station Omega had vanished without a trace. Military submarines had rescued me, not research vessels. The ocean floor had been massively disturbed, and marine life was fleeing a growing dead zone around the site. And somewhere in the deep Pacific, the creatures that had killed Sam and nearly killed me were still out there. The worst part was the growing certainty that our dive hadn't been an accident or a routine mission gone wrong. We'd been deliberately sent into the hunting ground of something that should never have been woken up. I stared at the ceiling tiles until they started to blur together, counting the tiny holes in each square to keep my mind busy. The painkillers were wearing off again, which meant the ache in my bones was coming back. But it also meant I could think clearly for the first time since they'd pulled me out of the water. Around 8:30, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway outside my room, not like the heavy boots of the security guards who'd been stationed there since yesterday, not like the quick clicks of the nurses making their rounds. Christine appeared in my doorway, looking both directions down the corridor before stepping inside. She moved like someone who didn't want to be seen, closing the door with barely a sound and walking straight to the window to check the parking lot. "Coast clear?" I asked. "For now." She pulled the chair close to my bed and sat down, setting a tablet on her lap. "I brought what I promised to show you." The tablet's screen was dark, but I could see her finger hanging over the power button like she was reconsidering. "Christine, whatever it is, I can handle it." She looked at me for a long moment, then activated the display. "This is classified military sonar data from the area where Deep Station Omega was located, taken 48 hours after your rescue." The image that appeared made me freeze. Instead of the flat sediment plain I remembered, the ocean floor showed a massive opening, a cave entrance that looked like someone had carved a tunnel straight into the Earth's crust. "That wasn't there before," I said. "No. This opened recently, probably within days of your dive." Christine swiped to the next image, showing the cave system from a different angle. "The sediment displacement patterns suggest this happened suddenly, not gradually." I studied the sonar readings, trying to make sense of what appeared on the screen. The cave entrance was massive, at least 100 meters wide, and dropping down into blackness that our equipment couldn't reach. "How deep does it go?" "Military subs have mapped it to over 2,000 meters before the cave system branches into multiple tunnels." She showed me another image that made my blood run cold. But that's not the worst part. The new sonar sweep showed just how big the thing was that had opened up under Deep Station Omega. The cave network was huge, an underground maze that went on for miles in every direction, with rooms big enough to fit whole city blocks. "Jesus," I whispered. "It's like an entire world down there. And something's been living in it." Christine swiped to a new image that showed movement patterns inside the cave system. "Military sonar picked up biological activity 46 hours after your rescue. Something moving through those tunnels. The sonar contact was unlike anything I'd seen in 8 years of deep-sea research. The readings showed a living creature, but the size measurements made no sense." According to the data, whatever was moving through those caves was over 150 meters long and 50 meters wide. That can't be right, I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. The military ran the scans 3 times to verify. Same results every time. Christine leaned closer, lowering her voice. Jerry, the things that attacked your submersible were small compared to whatever lives in those caves. I felt my blood turn cold. The creatures that had killed Sam and nearly killed me had been huge, 30 meters long with tentacles that could crush our reinforced hull like an empty can. But this thing was 5 times bigger. Where is it now? Christine's face darkened with worry. That's what I came to tell you. The big creature left the caves 2 days after we got you out. Military tracking shows it's moving through the deep Pacific right now. She showed me a map, with a red line tracking something's path across the ocean floor. The route led from the cave network toward the continental shelf, following deep water channels that would bring it near major shipping lanes. It's heading for shallow water, I said. The military thinks so, and they believe your encounter somehow triggered its emergence. I stared at the tracking data, remembering that massive eye watching us through the dark water. The intelligence I'd seen there, how it had deliberately studied our submersible before striking. You think our dive woke it up? I think your dive disturbed something that had been sleeping in those caves for a very long time. Christine glanced toward the door, then back at me. Jerry, I've been researching historical maritime incidents in this area. Ships disappearing without distress calls, entire fishing fleets vanishing overnight, deep sea installations going dark with no explanation. How far back? Over a century, but the incidents always come in clusters, separated by decades of normal activity. She pulled up another file on her tablet. The last major cluster was in 1952. 7 ships lost in 3 months, all in deep water near tectonic fault lines. The pattern was starting to click in a way that made my stomach turn. You think these things show up every so often? I think they sleep in deep cave systems until something disturbs them. Seismic activity, human intrusion, changes in ocean temperature. Something triggers them to wake up and hunt. I thought about how those creatures had worked together against our submersible. The way they'd carefully knocked out our escape systems without finishing us off right away. The smarts I'd seen behind those huge eyes. They were studying us, I said. Learning about our technology, our capabilities. Christine nodded. And now they know exactly how vulnerable we are. She showed me one more image, a sonar sweep of the cave entrance taken just yesterday. The opening was empty now, but the sediment patterns around it showed massive disturbance, like something huge had recently passed through. The military is tracking at least 3 separate contacts moving through deep Pacific waters, she said quietly. All heading toward different coastal areas. 3. The large one that left first, and 2 smaller ones that emerged yesterday. Each roughly the size of the creatures that attacked your submersible. I felt the room spin a little, and it wasn't from the painkillers. How many people know about this? Military command, a handful of Marine researchers with security clearances, and government officials who are trying to figure out how to handle a threat that officially doesn't exist. Christine turned off her tablet and got up, glancing out the window once more. Jerry, I need you to understand something. Your survival makes you valuable to the people studying these creatures, but it also makes you dangerous to the people trying to cover this up. What are you saying? I'm saying that some very powerful people would prefer if the only witness to these attacks couldn't tell anyone what he saw. The threat was obvious, and it explained the military personnel watching the hospital. The pressure from Warren and Tucker to accept the official explanation. Why are you showing me this? Why risk your career to tell me the truth? Christine paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Because I think what happened to you and Sam was just the beginning. And if these things are really heading for shallow water, people need to know what's coming. After she left, I lay in the darkness trying to process everything I'd learned. Somewhere beneath the Pacific Ocean, old caves had opened to release creatures that had been sleeping for decades. The things that had killed Sam were scouts, testing human defenses and capabilities. And now something 5 times larger was moving through the deep ocean toward populated coastal areas. I shut my eyes and tried to push away thoughts of what was coming. I stared at Christine's tablet, trying to make sense of what she was telling me. 3 creatures heading toward coastal areas was bad enough, but the way she kept looking at the door told me there was more. That's not everything, is it? She sat back down, her fingers hovering over the tablet screen. Jerry, what I'm about to show you changes everything we thought we knew about your encounter. The new sonar data made my stomach drop. Instead of 3 contacts moving through the Pacific, the screen showed 12 distinct signals scattered across thousands of miles of ocean. Each one roughly the same size as the things that had attacked our submersible. 12, I whispered. The large creature didn't just leave the cave system, Christine said quietly. It reproduced before it left. Military biologists think it was some kind of spawning event triggered by your encounter. I felt the room sway. You're saying our dive caused this? I'm saying the creatures used your dive to study human technology and capabilities. They learned about our submersibles, our equipment, our weaknesses. She pulled up another file showing the attack patterns from our descent. Look at how precisely they disabled your escape systems without killing you immediately. That wasn't random predator behavior. The data showed our entire encounter broken down into tactical phases. The creatures had systematically tested our hull strength, our ballast systems, our emergency protocols. They'd been conducting research on us while we thought we were the ones doing the investigating. Sam and I were lab rats. You were intelligence-gathering targets, and now they're applying what they learned. Christine showed me a map with red dots marking the 12 creature locations. Each one is heading toward a different major shipping lane, or coastal installation. The pattern was terrifyingly obvious. These things weren't just swimming around aimlessly. They were setting themselves up to watch every ship, every boat, every piece of human activity crossing the Pacific. How long have you known about this? Christine's expression grew even more troubled. Jerry, your dive wasn't routine station maintenance. Deep Station Omega was one of 6 installations that had reported strange readings over the past 6 months. Similar incidents happened near research facilities off Japan, Chile, and Alaska. Warren knew. Warren was following orders from people way above his clearance level. The military has been tracking these incidents worldwide, trying to understand what was causing deep-sea installations to go dark. I thought about Warren's jittery behavior during our pre-dive briefing, how he'd brushed off Christine's sonar readings, Tucker's obvious relief when our submersible was wrecked beyond repair. They sent us down there knowing we might not come back. They sent you down there hoping you'd make contact and survive to report what you found. You were the most experienced deep-water team they had access to. Christine leaned closer. Jerry, your survival wasn't luck. The creatures deliberately kept you alive because they wanted to study human physiology under extreme pressure. The memory of that huge eye watching us through the water suddenly felt different, darker somehow. We hadn't been prey at all. We'd been specimens. What about the other installations? Did anyone else survive? Christine shook her head. You're the only survivor from any of the 6 incidents, which makes you incredibly valuable to the people studying these things. She pulled up another file that made my stomach drop. It was my medical chart, but not the version Dr. Martinez had shown me. This one included detailed analysis of my injuries, tissue samples, blood work, and psychological evaluations. They've been studying me since the rescue. Every test, every scan, every conversation you've had with medical staff has been recorded and analyzed. The military wants to understand how human physiology responds to direct contact with these creatures. I stared at the data, watching my own trauma get broken down into research numbers and body measurements. That's why they don't want me talking to other researchers. That's part of it. But there's something else. Christine glanced toward the door again, then back at me. Your diving certification wasn't just pulled for safety reasons. It was permanently revoked to prevent you from conducting independent research. They're grounding me. They're controlling you. As long as you're classified as psychologically unfit for diving operations, you can't access deep water research equipment or participate in marine investigations. The full picture of what I was dealing with started coming together. I wasn't just some trauma victim getting better in a hospital. I was a controlled asset being handled by people who thought my survival was both useful and risky. What happens when I get discharged? Christine powered down her tablet and got to her feet. That depends on how cooperative you are with their version of events. If you accept the official explanation and keep quiet about what really happened, they'll probably offer you a desk job analyzing data for some government marine research program. And if I don't, then you become a security risk that needs to be managed more directly. She walked to the door and stopped, her hand resting on the handle. Jerry, I need you to understand something. The creatures that killed Sam aren't just unknown marine life. They're intelligent, organized, and they've been learning about human civilization during their emergence from the deep ocean trenches. How intelligent? Intelligent enough to coordinate attacks across multiple continents. Intelligent enough to study our technology and adapt their tactics. Intelligent enough to know that keeping one human survivor alive would give them more information than killing everyone they encountered. Christine cracked the door open and peeked into the hallway. The military officials who've been watching this hospital will probably visit you tomorrow. They'll offer you a choice between cooperation and consequences. But before you decide anything, remember that 12 creatures are now moving through the Pacific Ocean with detailed knowledge of human capabilities and weaknesses. After she left, I lay in the darkness trying to wrap my head around what I'd just learned. My run-in with those things hadn't been some random attack, or even them defending their territory. It had been a calculated intelligence operation carried out by something old and patient that had been watching humanity from the deep ocean trenches. Sam had died not because we'd wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time, but because we'd been deliberately sent into a situation designed to test both human technology and how we respond to extreme danger. And now, armed with everything they'd learned from our encounter, 12 creatures were spreading throughout the Pacific Ocean to continue their research on a much bigger scale. I shut my eyes and tried not to think about what they planned to do with all that data. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours after Christine left, my mind spinning through everything she'd told me. 12 creatures spreading across the Pacific. My encounter being used as some kind of intelligence operation. The realization that Sam and I had been sent down there as bait. But when Christine slipped back into my room around midnight, moving even more carefully than before, I could tell from her expression that the nightmare was about to get worse. "I couldn't leave without showing you this," she whispered, pulling her chair close to my bed. "New data came in an hour ago. The tablet screen displayed a geological survey map of the Pacific Ocean floor, but instead of the usual underwater mountain ranges and deep plains I knew from years of research, this map was covered in red dots marking cave openings. How many? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. 47 confirmed cave systems that have opened in the past 6 months, all along major tectonic fault lines, all showing signs of recent emergence from dormancy. I studied the pattern, recognizing the locations from my deep-sea research. The Mariana Trench, the Peru-Chile Trench, the Japan Trench. Every major deep-water formation in the Pacific had become active. This isn't just about our encounter, I said. No, your dive was one incident in a global awakening that's been happening for months. Christine pulled up another file showing historical maritime data. Jerry, I've been cross-referencing unexplained ship disappearances going back 2 centuries. The pattern repeats every 60 to 80 years. The records revealed groups of sea disasters with decades of regular ocean activity in between. Ships vanishing without any emergency signals, whole fishing fleets gone by morning, underwater facilities going silent with no reason given. They've been doing this for centuries, I whispered. Longer. Geological evidence suggests these cave systems have been opening and closing in cycles for thousands of years. We just never had the technology to detect the pattern before. Christine showed me core samples from the ocean floor around the cave entrances. The sediment layers revealed repeated disturbance patterns stretching back thousands of years, each one matching up with periods when more ships went down according to historical records. So what changed? Why are they all waking up now? Climate change, deep-sea mining, increased shipping traffic. We've been disturbing their environment on a scale they've never experienced before. Christine's voice dropped even lower. The military thinks we triggered a mass emergence by accident. I thought about the sharp intelligence I'd seen in that huge eye, the careful way the creatures had examined our technology before attacking. They're not just waking up randomly, they're working together. That's what scares the people tracking this. The creatures emerging from different cave systems are showing synchronized behavior patterns. They're communicating across thousands of miles of ocean. She pulled up sonar data showing the movement patterns of the 12 creatures she'd talked about before. Instead of random migration, they were moving in organized formations, keeping precise distances from each other while covering the most ocean territory possible. They're setting up a network, I said. A surveillance network. Each creature is positioned to monitor different aspects of human maritime activity. Shipping lanes, naval operations, coastal installations, deep-sea research. The scope of what we were facing slammed into me. These weren't just unknown predators emerging from the deep ocean. They were a very old species that had been watching and learning about human civilization for centuries, and now they were conducting the largest intelligence operation in history. Christine, how long have you known about this? She hesitated, then met my eyes. I've been part of a classified research group tracking these incidents for 8 months. We call ourselves the Deep Watch, marine researchers from around the world who've been studying the emergence patterns on our own. You've been investigating this the whole time. Your dive wasn't routine maintenance, Jerry. It was a deliberate contact mission. We needed someone with your experience to survive an encounter and report back what they found. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought it would. You knew what was down there. We knew something was down there. We didn't know how intelligent it was, or how organized. Christine leaned forward. Jerry, your survival provided crucial intelligence about their capabilities and behavior. Information that might be the key to understanding how to coexist with them. Coexist? I stared at her. These things killed Sam. They're studying us like we're insects. They're studying us because they're trying to understand what we are and whether we're a threat to their survival. Christine pulled up another file showing brain scan analysis. The creatures that attacked your submersible could have killed you instantly, but they didn't. They kept you alive and conscious during the entire encounter. Because they were experimenting on us. Because they were trying to communicate with you. The word sent a chill through me. I thought about how the creature had watched us through the viewport, the careful way it had struck, and the fact that I'd somehow ended up in an emergency pod with no memory of how I got there. You think they put me in that pod? I think they studied your physiology, learned what they needed to know about human survival requirements, and then deliberately placed you where rescue teams would find you. Christine showed me the analysis of my emergency pod's condition when the naval rescue team found it. The pod had been damaged in ways that matched careful handling by something with huge appendages, not random debris impact. They wanted me to survive. They wanted a human survivor who could report back to our species about the encounter. Jerry, you weren't just a research subject. You were their messenger. I stared at the data, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. The creatures hadn't just been studying human technology during our encounter. They'd been attempting some form of first contact. What message? Christine shut off her tablet and dug into her jacket, fishing out a small gadget that looked like someone had tinkered with a satellite phone. That's what we need to find out. This phone connects to a secure network of researchers who are tracking the creatures independently of government oversight. People who believe your encounter holds the key to understanding what these things want. I took the phone. My diving certification is gone. I can't access research equipment or participate in official investigations. The Deep Watch operates outside official channels. We have our own equipment, our own funding, our own research vessels. Christine stood up, checking the window again. Jerry, your career as a government-sponsored deep-sea researcher is over, but your role in understanding these creatures is just beginning. What are you asking me to do? Help us figure out how to communicate with something that's been living in the deep ocean for thousands of years. Something that's intelligent enough to coordinate global surveillance operations and patient enough to study human civilization for centuries before making contact. I thought about Sam's death, about the terror I'd felt as those huge tentacles broke through our viewport. But I also remembered the intelligence in that creature's eye, the gentle way it had handled my survival. The military officials Christine mentioned, they'll be here tomorrow? Probably. They'll offer you a choice between cooperation and consequences. A desk job analyzing sanitized data, or classification as a security risk that needs to be managed. Christine walked to the door and stopped, her hand resting on the handle. Jerry, 12 creatures are moving through the Pacific Ocean with detailed knowledge of human capabilities and weaknesses, but they're not attacking shipping or coastal installations. They're watching and learning. Learning what? Whether humanity is ready for the conversation they've been trying to start for centuries. After she left, I lay in the darkness holding the secure phone, thinking about everything I'd learned. My encounter with the creatures hadn't been a random attack or even a territorial defense. It had been a deliberate attempt at communication by something old and patient that had been watching human civilization from the deep ocean trenches. Sam had died not because we'd stumbled into a predator's hunting ground, but because we'd been chosen to participate in humanity's first real contact with an intelligence that had been sharing our planet for thousands of years. And now, I had to decide whether to help the people trying to understand these creatures, or accept the government's version of events and spend the rest of my career pretending that the most important discovery in human history had never happened. I closed my eyes and tried not to think about what would happen if we screwed this up.